hand this over to Gabriel, who's going to lead the teen panel.
So thank you all for coming. This is a very exciting panel we have for you, much more exciting than hearing those of us who were on the previous panel, no offense to my colleagues. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a conversation. So Family Equality, as I mentioned earlier, we're the national organization that represents you. And our work is split up into three areas. Community engagement around the country to develop strong communities that can support families in the ways that they need around the country, in local areas, statewide, and to connect people across state lines. The second thing that we do is educate the public, because as I said earlier, laws aren't created in a vacuum. They're created because the public is ready for them, understands them, and wants them. And we need to educate the public so that not only can we get those laws passed, but also so that as we go out into the world, people understand who we are, who our families are, and what we need, and why we are different. Our families are not the same, they are different, and all families are different. And so we have to acknowledge that. So our public education work is really critical to doing this. And the third is policy and advocacy work, which you can imagine at the state and federal level is extensive to change family law. One of the programs that we created that has turned out to be really the most effective piece of our work in all three areas is called the Outspoken Generation. And the Outspoken Generation is what we call the children, the young adult children of LGBTQ parents who came into the world in a variety of ways, who came into the world through heterosexual marriages, through surrogacy, through adoption, through foster care, through foster to adopt, who came into the world because their parents wanted them there and because their parents really wanted to give them a forever home. And the Outspoken Generation has been critical in the advances of our civil rights. You've heard Justice Kennedy last year when he spoke in the courtroom to counsel that was the proponent of Prop 8, and he said, "What about the 40,000 children in California? What about don't their voices matter?" And that was the direct result of an amicus brief that we filed on your behalf to the Supreme Court, and included, in fact, I think your story, Melina, and did it include your story as well? I think it did. You can find them all on our website and we can look, but I'm pretty sure you're in there. And then, case after case, as we've been trying to achieve just one of our legislative goals, which is marriage. It's gotten a lot of attention, but let's not forget it's just one goal to secure our families. This brief we kept getting requests from attorneys to file this brief. And we would rewrite the brief to represent stories, some stories from all over the country, and make sure we had a few stories right from that state, which was, by the way, the most difficult state to find stories was Oklahoma. Not because there aren't a lot of LGBT parents, but because they were so concerned about being outed or their children being in the public eye, even though we said we would only use the first name and no other identifying information. That's how great the concern is in this country. We then heard what began arguably the wave of marriage rights in this country. We heard Judge Posner, a Reagan-appointed judge on a panel of 3 judges in the Indiana and Wisconsin cases, specifically say to opposing counsel who was trying to argue that our families didn't deserve to be recognized for a variety of absolutely ridiculous reasons. And this Republican judge just looked at him and said, "Have you read the briefs?" And he said, yes. And he said, "How about Family Equality Council's brief? Did you read their brief?" And he said, and then he looked at the light, and there's a very funny moment, you should listen to the recording, where he said, "The light's not going to save you." There's a light that tells them how much time they have. And then one of the other judges said, "You're not the first to try that." And he goes on to describe the voices of really these young adults here, some of whom were in the brief and others who represent the same kind of people, and say to this counsel, this American citizen who is standing up with his law degree and a member of the state bar who's trying to argue against our civil rights, says to him, these are harrowing stories. And you're trying to deny these children their rights. And this has been a pivotal moment. Our organization has really been pushing for years, before Prop 8, to get our families to be seen so that people understand why LGBTQ Americans deserve equal rights in this country. And we were told by other advocates who we're on the same side with, they don't want to see our families because it's icky to see our families, because it's icky to see Travis with Greg and Reed, because that's not what people want to see. Hi, Greg and Reed. Everyone wave. Greg and Reed are Travis's parents. And we kept saying, no, when people see our families, they're going to understand us. And Greg was on the board during this time when my predecessor, Jennifer Chrysler, would literally go around the country and bang her fist on conference room tables trying to get people to understand the importance of viewing our rights through our families. So all of that is an introduction to these amazing young adults. So what I'm going to do is ask each of you to just, in order, we'll start with Melina, just to say your name and describe your family in any way you'd like to.
Hi, everybody. My name is Melina Samard Halm, and first of all, I'd like to thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and to be a part of the Outspoken Generation panel. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico with my 2 little brothers and 2 wonderful gay dads, Will and Marcelin, and I was born through surrogacy and egg donation, so through IVF. I just want to, first of all, to say, I'm open to any of your questions. I'm really excited to be here again and to answer anything. Don't hesitate to ask me anything. I'm sure more will be revealed about my family throughout the rest of the panel, but for now, I think that's it.
My name is Tomer Pooldayan. I have 2 dads, and we live in the Bronx.
I'm Eleanor, and I'm Tomer's twin sister, and we have the same dads, Greg and Ron. And well, I also live in the Bronx, and we are a family, and that's it, because we love each other, and that's what makes a family, I guess.
I'm Cece Eisenhart. I live in Albany, New York with my sister and my 2 dads, Mark and Eric. And yeah, that's it.
I'm Travis. I live in Westchester, New York with my 2 dads, Reed and Greg. We used to live in Connecticut, now we live in New York. That's about most of what's changed. We'll learn more later.
So first, I want to make sure that the cards are going around, and we'll ask. So first of all, I want to thank you again all for being here and sharing your story. It is by far the most powerful tool we have to change the world. I'm going to put out a couple of questions and ask you each to answer whichever speaks to you, and we can maybe have a little conversation among you while we collect some questions from the audience. So one of the questions is, do you ever feel how do you feel when you have to make a decision if you're going to come out about having parents who are gay? And if you have a story about telling that story. The other is how you felt on the day you found out that your parents could get married in New York. And the third is what you say to friends or teachers in your school when they have questions about your family, and how it makes you feel that they have those questions. All right, so who would like to start? Cece, go for it.
Okay, so when I was in 2nd grade, one of my classmates, she came up to me on the swings and asked if I had 2 dads. And I said, yeah, I do. And she was like, well, is one of them your stepdad? And I was like, no, they're both my dads. And it took a while to explain to her that they were married, and she finally got it and took the whole recess. And I mean, I still know her. She moved schools, but yeah.
Well, those are a lot of really important questions, and so I'm going to try to answer them all. I guess I'll start by just kind of mapping out the story of my family, because I think it starts a long time ago. I was actually one of the first children born to LGBT parents through surrogacy, so my dad's tried for 10 years to have a child. And so I was born in 1996, so starting in 86, they set out on this huge escapade in the face of bigotry, discrimination to have a child. And when I was born, my family actually gained a lot of publicity about it. And since then, I've been able to grow as a person, and my family has also developed as well. And now I can say with a lot of confidence that I could not be more proud of my family, but I wasn't always so brave about my family either. And growing up, I think, was difficult at times. There were many instances that I can recall where I was very scared, and I was scared to tell people about my family because, 18 years ago was a very different setting than it is now. And so coming out to people was always, especially when I was younger, it seemed like an ordeal. And I felt a lot of the times that I was kind of pushing my parents into the closet whenever it was convenient for me. I would lie sometimes about my family. One of the most memorably difficult times was when I moved to New Mexico from Los Angeles, because I was born in Los Angeles. And this was in 4th grade. And so it kind of was coming out again. I had to introduce myself to 20 new classmates. It was a small class. And when people asked about my parents, I just remember being petrified at first because I didn't want to be ostracized. I didn't want to be different at that time. And I think back, and I really am ashamed of myself for being ashamed of my parents. But through that experience, I think I was really able to claim my identity later on. And after 3 months of being, of blatantly lying to my classmates, I realized that once they actually met us, once they actually realized that I wasn't a freak or different or deviant or anything like that, I was actually able to change their minds. And that was so powerful for me. And so that was kind of like one of my coming out stories. And it was hard, and I felt like I was betraying the people I loved, who were so committed. But ultimately, it was rewarding because I realized how much our stories really matter and how much our families can change the minds of others. And since then, I've joined Outspoken Generation. I've had the opportunity to speak out on a lot of different levels in my schools, but also on a national level, and that's been so powerful. And the next question was, how did I feel when DOMA and Prop 8 were overturned? And that was an incredible change for me, just because I was able to contribute to it in the amicus brief, but it just meant that on this very national level, my family was being validated. And that we didn't need that validation, but it was still significant for our family to see that. And this is getting long, but ultimately, I could not be more grateful for my family and for the incredible pioneering work of my parents. It's been a journey, and it hasn't always been easy, but what we've learned, what we've taught, and what my parents have done for others is really priceless, and so I wouldn't have it any other way. And I would tell just that to any person who would oppose our families. I think we're all testimony to the fact that LGBT parents can raise really incredible kids and can have really outstanding families. So that's a long answer to 3 important questions.
I think my answer will be a little bit shorter than that, just a smidge. When I was younger, the first time I told people I had 2 dads was actually back in preschool. So this was before anyone of my age actually understood what I was telling them, which made it slightly easier and at the same time slightly harder, because I would tell them. and then they'll come back next week with a very similar question. Anyways, and the common theme you'll hear, though, from any age group is once your friends get to know you, they don't really care your family situation. They care that you're their friend and that they know you. And that's what is important. And if your friend is going to suddenly not be your friend because you have two parents of the same gender, they weren't really that much of a friend to begin with. And it's sad, but not everyone is going to be so nice. But on the bright side, most people, they get to know you, and it's fine throughout most of your life, so far at least. As for when my parents could finally get married, it was nice, but we've been a family before that. We were a family after that. More of the same in some regards, and better in others. That should be most of it.
Eleanor? Tomer?
So in my school, since it's really small, I went to school with most of my classmates for many years. So once I got to know them and meet them for the first time, and we were speaking about our families in kindergarten or some age of that sort, and then people were saying, oh, my mom does this for her job and my dad does this. And when it was my turn, I said, my dad does this and my other dad does this. And later that day, people would ask me, well, why don't you have a mom? Or how can they both be related to you? How were you born? And these are kindergartners, so of course in my kindergarten mind it was a lot simpler than it actually is. But well, I would tell them, well, I was made in a science lab, and I was given into this nice lady, and she had me in her tummy, and then she gave me to my parents because my parents really wanted me and my brother, and that's pretty much it. And that I am related to my parents fully, and so after that, they were like, okay, that's cool, and they may have had some other questions, like, I don't really remember, but those are the things that I really had to get over telling them. It wasn't that hard, but I feel like once they got over the fact that it's possible for me to be alive and that I'm normal, they just became my friend, and honestly, they're still my friends now. And they treat me like any other person because I am like any other person, and that's pretty much my story.
Whenever I meet new people and I tell them I have two dads, they always ask a ton of questions like, how is that possible? You need a mom. And so I always go through the whole long story of how I was born. It was very similar to Eleanor's. And even after I'm done, they still ask the same questions over and over again, and I tell them again, and sometimes they just don't get it. But they're still my friends, and if they would not accept it, which it hasn't come to that yet, but then I wouldn't be their friends.
Thank you. Well, I'm curious how you all relate or think about your surrogates and your egg donors. And do you think about them? What do you think of them? Do you have relationships with them? Cece?
Well, I actually have a very strong relationship with my mother. My sister and I, we call her Mommy. We have an older brother, and they both live in, well, actually, he lives in California, and now my mom lives in Hawaii. We Skype on our birthdays, and we call each other. So we know her quite well.
You will hear stories from all ends of the spectrums. I'm from the other end of the spectrum that you just heard. I do not really know my surrogate or egg donor. I think I met them once. You don't need to. It depends on who you are. Sometimes you want a relationship with them because you're related genetically. And sometimes it's just the family you have at hand is what matters. The people who raised you, the people you love as parents and have since you were, well, as long as you can remember.
I think I speak for Eleanor and I when I say this, but we don't really have any connection with our surrogate, and I don't even really think of her as related to me. She was just helping with us being born, and I don't think I've seen her for a very, very long time.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that as well. I could not be more grateful, though, for the surrogate. I have the utmost respect for her. I think, obviously, I wouldn't be born without her, and my parents are also so grateful. But there isn't some sort of bond or that I do have with her. I actually haven't met her. I don't even know who she is, but I still have a lot of respect and gratitude for her.
So we got a couple of questions. Do other people have cards and questions? Make sure you grab a card or any piece of paper and just pass it up to anybody in the front row. So one question is, what's been the hardest part, if there's been one, of having same-sex parents? I don't know. I don't think all of you have. Well, does anybody have any reflections on that? Silence speaks volumes.
Well, that's because the hardest part is probably the same as most other families. Growing up, dealing with the drama of life. The hardest part, I guess, of specifically same-sex parents would probably have to be explaining it to people who don't understand what you're trying to tell them. And it actually just depends where you live sometimes. Because like where I live, and it sounds like where everyone else here has lived, correct me if I'm wrong, except for Melina. She went through a little bit of trouble. The people around you generally don't care as much once they get to know you, once they understand. Some places you can't come out quite so quickly, but there are many places now where all you have to do is tell people and they will get it, and if they don't get it, it won't take very long to have them understand.
I agree that the hardest part would be dealing with the questions because our families are basically the same except they're different genders, and there's a lot of people that are different genders in this world. And so I feel that just trying to explain over and over again would be hard, but I also feel like it's sort of nice to be spreading awareness about how this isn't very different. No, it is different, but it's not different in a bad way.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with what has been said before. Every family has their own issues, but I think for LGBT couples having families, like we still do have to reconcile that there is stigmatization that still exists in our country and internationally. And so I think that's why it's so important that that all of us are here, that there are kids speaking out, that people are creating families in the face of sometimes discrimination and bigotry, because we need to pave the way for families that perhaps live in places that aren't as accepting as our homes. I think that is one of the challenges that faces our community now, but I think it's obviously gotten a lot better since 20 years ago when I was first born too. So again, I think we're all doing a very important thing here, and it has a lot of meaning for other couples elsewhere.